If I could sit down with you for 5 minutes before your divorce starts, these are some things that I beg you to avoid because I've talked to hundreds of people and some of their stories really frustrate me since I've learned so much over the last 5 years about the business of divorce. Yeah, that's right. Divorce is actually a business. I don't know what the statistic is. Maybe I'll find it and drop it in the comments or drop it on screen, but it's really frustrating to see that people buy into the business of divorce and liquidate all of their assets trying to get divorced. So let's talk about things that nobody will warn you about so you don't become the next statistic or cautionary tale. Here's one that's in my lane. Believing the house means home. I see this so many times, and so many people cling to the house thinking that this is what's going to be stable for them. And I understand it because a lot of times it's where you've built community, you have memories, all your stuff is there. I know I lived in a big home. It took two people to manage the home financially, and I tried to manage it on my own post divorce, and it was a disaster. So many people cling to the house thinking that it's going to be a stable thing to do for the children. But what if the mortgage and the financial responsibility of the house becomes really like an anchor or becomes like a financial prison for you? That is where it really can start unraveling. And let me explain to you what that means. When you're going through a divorce, a lot of times there is a large amount of equity in the home, especially over the last 5 years since COVID. Home appreciations have gone crazy. I've seen people that bought homes just in the last 3 years that have a significant amount of equity in their homes. That amount of money, the equity is the asset. That is what you're negotiating. It's really important to understand what you're giving up in the event you keep the mortgage. And I've done other videos on this that I'll link in the show notes about how to divide equity. But understanding what you're trying to do when you're going through this process is not just clinging to the house. This is a financial decision. And with that financial decision comes a life that you're going to have to lead post divorce. And that is where things really need to be clear. You need to have some really good clarity about what you're signing up for. So in my particular case, I signed up for the marital home, meaning I was going to live in it with the children. And as soon as I signed the paperwork, things started unraveling financially. I live in Illinois, and there's a lot of maintenance that goes on when you own a piece of real estate. I owned a home on a lot, a normal standard suburban lot, and I had to have somebody come and do all the landscaping and do all the maintenance. And we have snow removal and fall cleanup and gutter cleaning and changing the furnace from winter to summer. And we had a sprinkler system and that had to be aerated. I felt like I was just constantly writing checks post divorce. Well, that's all coming out of my bank account now, right? Because it's not a joint account. It's coming out of my side. And all of those maintenance items really started becoming a financial burden for me. Some of my appliances started breaking down and I needed to buy a new washer and dryer. I needed to do some things like that. And I just thought to myself, what did I do? Here I was trying to be stable and keep my kids stable, that I was causing myself so much stress and distress just because I was having to manage a home that was way too large for me to keep track of. I couldn't even keep track of cleaning the house. It was way too big. We had a basement. So I would go down and I'd try to clean the basement out because that's where the kids were most of the time. And I try to keep the basement cleaned and the rest of the house was completely dusty and dirty. And well, we had a housekeeper in my marriage. And so now couldn't afford to have that housekeeper come in. So I had to keep the house clean all by myself. And the house was very large and it was really becoming overwhelming for me. So that is the biggest thing that I see a lot is people trying to keep the house because they feel like keeping the house will keep the kids stable. Well, if mom's stressed or dad's stressed, whoever's keeping the house from a financial perspective, I can guarantee you that the kids are going to feel that and it is not going to make them feel stable. So make sure that you understand what all of those things are. The other thing that I see all the time is not separating emotions from negotiations. I've watched people fight over furniture while losing thousands of dollars in legal fees. Divorce is a business, and if you get the wrong professionals around you, they are going to fuel that fire, fuel the fact that they are trained to litigate. They are trained to be adversarial. They are trained to make sure somebody wins. Nobody wins in divorce. Nobody. It's going to be a lose-lose situation, and that is how it should go. If both parties feel pain somehow financially, that is really what divorce is about. You're dividing a household into two households. And a lot of times there isn't enough money to go around to do that. And you have to understand that you may not be able to live in the lifestyle that you're accustomed to. And taking a stand on something that is counterproductive is only going to fuel the fire for divorce attorneys. And it is going to make your divorce last a really long time. And while it lasts a really long time, you're racking up legal bills. I've seen legal bills in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And this is criminal. It's actually criminal. And you should not ever think that paying that much for a divorce is reasonable. It is not reasonable. And the reason that it's not reasonable is because divorce is the unraveling of a marriage is dictated by the state that you're getting it divorced in. So support numbers, calculations, what's being divided, all those things are predetermined for you the minute you sign your marriage license. And unless you have a prenup, something that states if this doesn't work out, this is how it should be, the state is going to dictate that for you. And this is something that a lot of people miss, that they can go and figure out for themselves what the laws of their state are, and they can determine a lot of things and come together. They can, through a mediator, if you cannot communicate. And most of the time I tell people, if you're here and you're divorcing, you're probably not communicating well. And if you are communicating, you're probably not communicating well. And both parties are probably scared. They're scared of what their future holds. And so when people get scared, their brain shuts down and they cannot think clearly. And when you can't think clearly, you can't make good decisions. Knowing what the boundaries are and knowing what your state is going to dictate will help you decide how things are going to be divided. And you can't take a counterproductive position on something that doesn't make sense from a legal perspective, right? If you have an account, let's say, and this happens all the time, let's say that there's an account, let's say it's a retirement account that has one person's name on it. And people do not understand that if you have a marriage, everything that was accumulated during that marriage, more than likely, is marital, especially when it comes to like retirement plans. Retirement plans may be in one person's name or another person's name, but that does not mean that it's not marital. It is not mine or hers or his or what, hers. That is really where people go sideways because they think, look, I've been a stay-at-home parent and I haven't been contributing to a retirement plan. I don't have one in my name. And so my spouse's retirement plan is their retirement. Well, that is not the case. That is false. And when you have something that your marriage you've been contributing to from a marital perspective, marital dollars were going into that account to save for a retirement plan, it's 50-50. It's half and half. Both people own that retirement plan, and it is divided when you're going through a divorce. So don't take a counterproductive position, and that's my retirement, and don't touch my retirement, because that is not going to happen. And then your divorce is going to cost a lot of money for you to try to say that they can't touch my retirement, when at the end of the day, everything is going to be divided. So here's another one that I see a lot in my lane: letting a spouse promise to do a buyout on a property, on a piece of real estate, when they don't know if they can qualify for a buyout. You need somebody to take a look at the numbers and make sure that whatever you're setting out to do can be carried out. That's the biggest thing. They said that they'd refinance and they were going to do a buyout, and then post-divorce, that person is stuck because they don't qualify to do what they said that they were going to do. Make sure you get proof. Make sure that they have talked to a lender. Make sure that they have talked to a divorce mortgage specialist. Make sure that they understand what all of the things need to happen in order for them to qualify to carry out what they've agreed to in the timeline that you've agreed to. All of this stuff is going to be written in your settlement agreement, and then you're going to, post-divorce, you're going to start carrying out all the things that you've agreed to. And if somebody has said that they're going to do something within a certain amount of time and they can't do it, guess what? It's either going to cause you to go back to court or it's going to unravel plans of the other person. If there's, say, a buyout that somebody is counting on so that they could go buy their own house and that doesn't happen within the timeline that they said that it's going to, then it could unravel their plans as well as your plans. And most people then have to go back to attorneys and get legal counsel and get some intervention there to make sure what's the next step, because they didn't put a plan B in their settlement agreement. They didn't talk about the what ifs. What if something doesn't happen? And that is a lot of times where legal bills can really stack up as well. Here's another one: not understanding how support affects mortgage qualification. Support obligations, when one person is having to pay the other person support from a lending perspective, is counted just like a car loan. A lot of times, depending on how it's categorized, whether it's support, spousal support, a lot of times in some states it's called maintenance, how that affects mortgage qualification post-divorce, or if you have to pay for child support, meaning you have children together and you're obligated to pay a certain amount every month to support the children and their well-being, that is counted as a liability. Just like if you had a car payment or a student loan payment or something, we count that as an obligation. So if you have not considered that that's the way that it's going to be counted, and you're saying, look, I'm going to do a buyout and I'm going to do it within this period of time, and now you're obligated for support to the other person, guess what? You may not qualify with that support payment. So that's really important to make sure that you've done some projections, done some pre-planning to make sure that you qualify for these things. The other thing is, if you're going to be receiving support, sometimes, and this happens all the time, where an attorney puts in a legal binding document that one person is going to refinance the house within 90 days, and a big portion of their income is support income. Well, in mortgage lending, I need that support to be paid as ordered for 6 months for a conventional loan. Well, sometimes they put in the agreement that the person that is going to keep the house is going to refinance the mortgage within 90 days. If a portion of their income is support and I need 6 months, guess what? We're stuck. We cannot do the loan for that person until we get 6 months of receipt of the support. The other thing that happens is there's not enough continuance of it. Let's say that it's spousal support and you're only going to be receiving it for 3 years. Well, you need 6 months of receipt of the support, and then you need another 36 months. My underwriter's going to look at your settlement agreement and they're going to make sure that you're going to receive it for at least another 3 years from the time I close my loan. So let's say that there's only 3 years total that you've been awarded. You get the 6 months. Now, guess what? You only have 2.5 years left. And I cannot use any of that income to use for qualified income in a loan. So it's really important, once again, to do planning and make sure that all of your agreements can be carried out post-divorce. This isn't just about a legal process, it's a financial process as well. A lot of times people don't understand, and this is not in my lane, but it is something that I make people aware of, and that's projecting what taxes will be, whether it's income taxes or capital gains exposure from selling a piece of real estate. When you're forgetting to plan for taxes on any kind of asset transfers, what that looks like, if you're splitting assets, could really be turned into a tax bomb that nobody is anticipating, that nobody saw coming. And that could be a disaster for one person or the other, thinking that they're going to get this large lump sum of money that they can use for one thing or another. And then they go to liquidate it. Let's say it's a retirement plan, and they go to liquidate it, not understanding that they are going to get slapped with a huge tax bill if they do that. And that is something that somebody needs to be aware of as you start splitting assets and deciding what you're going to need post-divorce. Another one is getting off a deed, but not off the mortgage. And this happens more times than I can count. People think if their attorney just says, oh, just quit claim off the deed and they'll be fine. That is not the case. There's two different things that happen on a piece of real estate. One is the mortgage, or the obligation of the debt that's on the house. and the other is the deed. And the deed dictates who owns the piece of property. So if one person just quit claims off the deed, meaning that they are removing their ownership interest of the house, but they still remain on the mortgage, they're still obligated on that mortgage from a lender perspective, whoever holds the mortgage, whoever the debt is to. If somebody's still on the debt from a mortgage perspective, they're still obligated on it. And if the other person stops paying it or misses a payment, it's still tied to that other person's credit report. You cannot just quit claim off a deed and not held responsible any longer. Two things have to happen. You have to be removed from the debt and removed from the deed in order to walk away from a piece of real estate and not have any further obligations. Okay, we've talked about a lot here, and I'm not trying to overwhelm you. I just see a lot of these things happening in divorce that people are not taking care of. So how do you protect yourself from all these? You build a team around you, people that can give you guidance, people that are resolution focused, people that you can trust that will help you with making these decisions that's going to protect you post-divorce. This is a legal system. This is a lawsuit. A divorce is a lawsuit, and you want to be protected post-divorce from anything coming up after the divorce. It's going to cost you more legal bills. And you do not want to be dragged back to court or made to pay any more legal bills than absolutely necessary. So making sure that you surround yourself with people that can help you look past what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know, right? And so surrounding yourself with people that are going to help you make these decisions is going to make for a smoother transition for you and onto your next chapter of your life. So the next thing I see is failing to gather documents early in the process. The number of people that tell me, I wish I had made copies of those tax returns before he changed the password is staggering. You need to understand that this is a legal process that you're going to start dividing assets. And the way you know what you're dividing is to know what the dollar amount is in the account. So you need to have copies of everything, all of the accounts, regardless whose name is on it. You need to have copies of them so that you know what you're dividing. So you know if it's a good deal or a bad deal or how you're going to start dividing these accounts or exchanging assets or giving up one thing for another thing. If you don't know what's in the account, then you don't know if it's going to be a reasonable offer to you. And I see this a lot with pensions, and I see this a lot with retirement plans, that the other person says, okay, you just keep the house and I'll keep all my retirement accounts. Well, what if the retirement accounts are worth $1 million and there's only $200,000 of equity in the house? That's not a good deal, right? And so you need to know what is in all of the accounts so that you know what is a reasonable offer and how the assets are being divided equitably, as we say. It doesn't necessarily mean dollar for dollar. If you're in a community property state, then it's 50-50, but that doesn't mean dollar for dollar necessarily. Every asset is accounted for differently, and the numbers could be different. Retirement plans are of a higher value because they're an appreciating asset than home equity. So having somebody to help you with those calculations is going to be really important. This is so frustrating for me when I see this, that somebody comes to me and says, my attorney says that I should do X, Y, or Z with the house. And I think, how dare that attorney make these type of suggestions, especially if they're not then following it up with, but you should go speak to somebody to make sure. The attorney is saying you should just sell the house. That's the easiest thing to do. That is not always the case. And thinking that your attorney is going to handle all these financial things is really a problem. And attorneys handle the legalities of the divorce. They do not make financial choices. They cannot tell you whether or not is a good financial decision for you. And who's making sure that the settlement actually works in the real world, not the attorney. They're just making sure that your agreements are going to get you through the legal process. That's it. Do not rely on them for any kind of financial advice. Do not rely on them to be your therapist. Do not give them all of the bad things that your spouse did during your marriage. That a lot of times is not going to equal anything in the legal system. The legal system does not care that your spouse cheated on you. For the most part, it's a no fault situation. And so it's not going to equal dollars. It's not going to make that right by giving you extra dollars in your settlement. Understanding what that means and understanding that their job is to get you through the legal process. If you can come to terms with your spouse outside of the court system and know everything that you have and know what a reasonable division of the assets would be, then the attorney is only there to write up your agreements and file it with the court system to make sure that the judge stamps it. That is what their job is. I feel like I'm going on a tangent here, but these things are really critical to people understanding. And I don't think that it's clear. And people think, okay, I'm getting a divorce. I just go hire somebody and they'll take care of everything. They will not. So it frustrates me to see that people really rely on attorneys to do things. And all it's doing is liquidating the kids' college fund or liquidating retirement that you could have had or liquidating something that you both could have and split by giving it up to an attorney to do all the aspects of the divorce or cover all the aspects of divorce. That is not smart at all. Okay, another one. Assuming credit will not be affected. A mortgage payment, if you're obligated on a debt and your spouse just refuses to pay it and says, no, that's yours and you need to pay it and I'm not paying it, and you are tied to it on your credit report and they miss a payment, guess what? It affects your credit report. It is going to wreck your credit report. If it's a mortgage payment that is missed, guess what? Your credit scores could drop significantly by hundreds of points. It could take you from the 700s to the 500s if you miss a mortgage payment. And that is going to mean that post-divorce, that your credit is going to dictate the type of financing that you can get on many things. Insurance companies look at credit reports. Car loan people look at credit reports. Everybody looks at credit reports these days. And if your credit is wrecked, you don't want to try to have to explain to creditors post-divorce. They don't care. They're looking at the scores. And if the scores are bad, most of the time, that is going to cause you worse interest rates. And sometimes it'll cause denial of the loan. Credit is really important to protect it, to make sure that all of the payments are paid timely. Even if you just make the minimum payment, it's better than no payment. And you really need to protect your credit, know what's on your credit, and keep that clean throughout the divorce so that post-divorce you can carry out all of the things that you need to do for you and your financial future. And really, do not do this alone. This is not something, divorce really makes you feel isolated. I know I've been there. I isolated myself mostly just because I didn't want to have to explain to all the people in my life why. And divorce can make you feel really isolated, scared, right? You're really scared of what your future is going to hold. But the strongest thing that I've seen is the people that surround themselves with a group of support. And believe me, I know it sounds expensive to surround yourself with all of these people and all of these professionals, but if you're using the right people for the right things, your overall divorce is going to be a lot more economical. If you're not relying on the wrong person to give you guidance, if you're relying on your attorney to give you financial advice, yes, your divorce is going to be expensive. But if you surround yourself with somebody that is really strong about understanding the division of assets in a divorce, like a certified divorce financial analyst, that is going to mean that your division of assets is going to be more successful. You're going to be able to go to the negotiation table with the information and say, look, this is why this is. And when you can explain things and people understand it, and it makes sense, then you're not going to bump up against a lot of emotional rejection because you're able to explain it in a reasonable manner. And that is what I suggest people do when it comes to the house. When it comes to the house, don't take a counterproductive position and just say, I'm keeping the house and blah, 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 because you did this or you did that or you did the other thing. No, I'm keeping the house is because I can qualify to keep it. It makes sense for my post-divorce life and budget, and I'm able to pay out the equity in this manner. And when you know all of those things and you can come to the negotiation table with a smart option, then it'll be met with more interest in the option. So surround yourself with a support team. And once again, I don't share this information to scare you. I share it because you deserve better than surviving. You deserve to rise. You deserve to rebuild, to make informed decisions that protect your peace. If any of this resonates with you, or if you want other things that I should be talking about in these videos, please drop them in the comments. I'm happy to answer any questions. If you want to drop the word thrive in the comments and just know that you're on the path to a better future for yourself, then I would love to hear from you. I would love if you would reach out, and I'm here to support you. If you're going through it right now, please subscribe. I'm here and you don't have to do this alone. And I'll be dropping videos every single week. That is my commitment to you, that you're going to hear from me. And this will help you get through the divorce process. I know that it's a lonely place to be, and I know that you're scared, and I know that things feel uncertain for you, but you will get through it and you'll be able to rebuild. So I always like to say that you can reset, rebuild, and rise. Thanks so much.